Hey guys, what's up? Thanks for coming to Bitcoin and the Bible Small Group Week 6. If you have been around this entire time, thank you. It's been a joy to do this with you. And to start off, I just want to say I'm really grateful that I had the opportunity to share what I have with you. And I'm excited for today too. Today, we are going to talk through episodes 21 and 22. And we're kind of skip around through the rest of the series as they kind of do in the podcast as well. And so if you get a chance to listen to the rest of the series, it's really good. They do a roundtable discussion, 2 different ones. And then they talk through as well about stable coins and lending, which is not something I really am going to get into today. But I am looking forward to this group allowing us to take the next step. And once this is over, you will have all the information that you need in order to take that next step. And that's my prayer for you through this entire thing, is that you would be able to communicate to your pastor, to your community, to your family about the reasons that you use Bitcoin and why that is a money that God can bless. And so to start off, episode 21 talks about steps for newcomers. And if you're new to your Bitcoin journey, or if you're new to understanding the reasons why to use Bitcoin versus other money, it's really good to walk through these steps. And the preface here has a lot to do with what the Bible says. And we'll just start there. In Proverbs 10:14, it says that the wise store up knowledge, but the mouth of a fool invites ruin. And when we're sharing with our community, with our church, with our family, that we use Bitcoin and why we use it in a certain way, it's important that we communicate it in the right way. I've been really pragmatic to do that with this podcast or with this video, is to say the right things and not get ahead of myself for the reasons why I want to use it or why you have to use it. No one needs to. But everyone needs to understand and know why they follow Christ. That's the main teacher here. And we need to be sure, whenever we're gaining information or even sharing that with others, of who our teacher is. And you could think of me through this video as being a teacher of sorts that, if you've never heard of Bitcoin before, this is your, first take at it, that it could be me just saying, trust me with this information and listen to this, and this is the only way to accept it. And that's not true. What Bitcoin teaches us is that we can verify that information. And we should be able to. We should be able to not have to trust what someone says and be able to verify that for ourselves and go get that information from multiple sources. That's why I like that we have so many versions of the Bible, because we can verify that what it says across all these different iterations of what Christ is teaching, that it's the same lesson, that it's the same premise. And that is echoed through Bitcoin culture. Don't trust, verify. Christ teaches us this, when he says, but the mouth of a fool invites ruin, is because the foolish that are speaking, people that are speaking foolishly about money or about Bitcoin or about saving are just inviting ruin. So let that be more of like a tool for you to use moving forward, that you don't have to trust what I say. You haven't had to this entire time, but you can verify that what I'm saying is accurate by going and reading about it in the Bible, all the verses that I'm sharing, but you can also verify on what Bitcoin is and what the code says that it is as well. And you should fact check me. And moving forward, as you start to learn from other people and start to gain more Bitcoin knowledge, you can fact check them as well. Proverbs 10:17 says, whoever heeds discipline shows the way to life, but whoever ignores correction leads others astray. And that's important because this entire journey has taken patience. If you've listened to this far, you've listened to 5 hours of me blabbing, and that discernment to know okay, well, what pieces do I need to remember, and what pieces, is he just sharing that is maybe just my own take on some things? It's important to heed good instruction. And that's what Proverbs is teaching us here, and it's what we should do with each other as well. That we shouldn't ignore correction. If there's something that I said over the course of this entire podcast or lesson that I can take that correction in the comments, feel free to jump in and say, no, you said something wrong, and I'll be happy to correct it. And it's because I don't want to lead people astray. I don't want to teach you something that God says about money and it not be what God says at all. It's so easy to fall into traps of debt, or to fall into traps of like the latest craze. Hey, go download this app, you'll make a bunch of money. It's easy for us to fall into that because, well, we all need money to live in our society. But beyond that, it's showing us that the discipline is important. And if we look at it from a different way, we can just see that the Proverbs, when it says 10:17, it's whoever heeds discipline shows the way to life. That learning Bitcoin is a discipline. It takes time. You won't be able to get it all through this one video or through this one series, but that you start to pursue things that are not flashy. You start to have an outlook on life that, while others are seeing it as like a gratification, that you can start to take that internally and say, my gratification comes from knowing God and believing what he says and following his way of living for me, because he wants the best for you and he wants to give you the best. So when you can finally take that and not seek out those flashy things that are instant gratification for our own well-being. I think about altcoins or like additional cryptos, that when we're not seeking those out and we're, taking the discipline, that we are actually showing the way to life. In Ecclesiastes 5:19, it says, moreover, when God gives someone wealth and possessions and the ability to enjoy them, they accept their lot and they are being happy in their toil. This is a gift of God. So think about the work that it takes to obtain money, or the work that it takes to learn about Bitcoin, and that reward, we can live in it and we can enjoy it. And we can enjoy the fruit of our labor. When we work so hard for something and we're just saving it and never using it, it's not the fulfillment of what God allows us to have and use. I'm not saying go like cash out everything and buy a boat or like get that bigger house or whatnot. What I'm trying to say is that we need to not fall trap to the other side, which is holding Bitcoin and just holding Bitcoin and not having enough and having that fear mentality that keeps us from enjoying our life. That, you can go enjoy a good dinner with your family. You can use the tools, use the money that God has given you and the wealth that God has allowed you to obtain to live a good life. And that it's not a sin to do that. Ecclesiastes 9:7 says, go eat your food with gladness and drink your wine with a joyful heart, for God has already approved what you do. We can both enjoy life and be thankful for the scarcity. The scarcity, talking about the finite supply of Bitcoin, that there's only 21 million. And when we can do both of those things, when we can be both happy with what we're spending on and happy that there's only a limited amount, we can start to take the pressure of money off of our life and allow it to not just work for us, but allow us to work for the correct thing, to see work as a gift from God and as a way that he blesses us. There is a piece to that we need to be cautious of, though, and that's the love of money, right? When we that's kind of what I was getting at earlier, is when we are so obsessive with how much Bitcoin we have, and saving it all and never spending it, and it doesn't allow you to have a lifelong relationship with Bitcoin, because you're going to have to sell it. It is money. It is a money that you can use in your daily life. And so it's going to take that responsibility and that importance value to place those in the right way. Next, I'd like to talk through the steps that they discuss in the podcast to be able to kind of move forward with your understanding and with your journey of savings. And that's actually the first step, which is set a reasonable goal for your savings. If we don't set that reasonable goal, we could again fall trap to just wanting it constantly and having that love of money come back into our life, which is not the point that we are trying to understand here. When we grasp this idea of there's only so many Bitcoin, and I can save in this money, to cross that bridge to get there, it takes us understanding two things. First, that when we save in this money, that there will be times of lot and times of less. And that God allows both to happen. In the times of less, we rely on God very heavily. And in the times of lot, we thank God for the things that we have. And in any capacity, in any way that we, wherever we find ourselves on that scale of lot or less, we are able to put the attention back into the Creator, to thank God for the ways that He has either pulled us out of the times of less or given us and blessed us with abundance. And the step that we're getting at here is to start saving if you haven't. If you're in that time of less and you feel that you don't have anything to save, that's where this technology can come in and start to change your heart and change your mind about what you can save. Because I think that everybody has spare change lying around. At least I can. There was a homeless guy outside the church earlier today, and I know that he has less than most have. But what he has is life. And his life can do a lot. Our life can do a lot. When we think about our life as scarce, and when we think about our life as short, we can start to become trapped to this idea of that we can never save anything and that we don't have anything of value. It's important that we start saving, and we start saving in self-custody. We start saving it for ourselves and knowing that no one can take away our faith. And when I'm saying saving, I'm talking about it kind of in two ways. Saving the presence of God in your heart, keeping it there and loving Him, and saving money and keeping it for your future and for your family and for those times of need. Step 2 that they talk about here is embracing communication with the right people. You can communicate and should communicate with your spouse about this next step, about what you would like to see for your savings. Once you set that reasonable goal, you can communicate with the people closest to you. Educate your children, for instance, on this new form of money and why you're saving in it and how they can utilize it. If you're young, if you're listening to this and you're under 18, tell your parents and let them know that you would like to start saving in this way and how they can come alongside you and support you in that as well. This starts as an individual decision, but it doesn't end there. It continues on into the community and into the people around you so that they can make sure that they know if something was to happen to you, how they would obtain that wealth, how they would receive that for themselves, or how they would use it to offset, the things that you're no longer there to provide. Isolation is the opposite of what we want here. This should allow us to start going through the steps to talk to the right people and be prudent about what you share. Be very cautious about what you share and with who, because again, this is a very self-responsible kind of technology. So if you're, out sharing, to everyone where you store your private key, like they're just going to rob you blind. It's not going to be a very good thing to do, is to just go around talking to everyone about it. Proverbs 13:7 says, "One person pretends to be rich, yet has nothing. Another pretends to be poor, yet has great wealth." It's important that you communicate to the right people the right things. And I think that's just true in life, because we could go around, acting as though we're rich, and like the scripture says, yet have nothing. I think about people that have, show wealth but have debt. And then I think about people that have wealth and sadly hoard it. Step 3 that they mention in the podcast here is to seek out reliable information and verify them. And we've talked through this a little bit earlier in this episode, is that, the coolest part of the Bible is that it's reliable information. You wouldn't go to a church and see, scribbled out verses and just say, oh, we're not going to talk about that part. If it's in the Bible, the church talks about it. And it's reliable in that way because it's verifiable over years and generations and contexts. But the cool part with the Bible is it's just right there in front of you. You can read it, you can understand it, and take it for yourself. That's the first part of really anyone's journey towards faith. The hard part with Bitcoin is that you need to do the hard work of verifying what you're reading versus what the code says and how things are actually unfolding. And so, you should be able to read an article or see a news heading that says, Bitcoin's dead, and understand that you run a node. You see the blockchain. There was just a block 5 minutes ago. There's going to be another block in the next 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. And that understanding allows you to frame it correctly. That news article that you're reading is not necessarily saying something that's fully accurate. It's more of a tactic or a fearmonger or a weapon that we can avoid, because again, it would be like, the Bible being scratched out and just say, oh, we're not, that part of the Bible's dead. And it's like, no, it's there and it's in the scripture and we can read it because it's what God says. Not to say that God says anything about what Bitcoin says. I'm sorry, I'm conflating the two a lot. Again, I talked earlier in previous episodes about how there's a lot of parallels, and a lot of those I will draw on in this episode, so that way we can start to not compare and contrast of which one is better than another, but to see them more as an alignment for what God has us to do with money. Proverbs 11:14 says, "For a lack of guidance, a nation falls, but victory is won through many advisors." So seek out those advisors. Seek out those people that know what they're talking about. And when you seek those people out and when you start talking about them, verify what they're saying. Double check to make sure that the people you're talking to aren't just, saying what they think you want to hear, and verify that across multiple parties as well. I think another big thing is find people that are willing to tell you you're wrong. I've already said, if I'm wrong, go in the comments, let me know that I've messed up. But bigger than just finding people that will tell you you're wrong. Be willing to change. And I think that's been the most challenging part for me in doing this series, has been that when I'm coming on here and I'm saying, hey, don't use credit cards because they're a way of, printing money, or don't use, debt to just roll over year over year because it creates more discrepancies between like the money system that we use. I am human and I have dollar-based debts, and I'm not out of that fully. But the same way that a pastor can stand on stage and can speak from the pulpit and say, hey, we shouldn't sin, he is more than likely sinning through the week as well, because we're all human and we need to be able to correct when we're wrong and be willing to change those ways. Step 4 here that they discuss is plays off of what we had been talking about in step 2, but it's never share your private key. Don't take a picture of it. Don't take a screenshot. Don't share it with other people. This is the first time in human history where you can own something and it not be confiscated from you, but it takes responsibility to do so still. It's important that you take these steps to securing your finances because they are your finances. They're not anyone else's problem. Proverbs 14:15-16 says, "The simple believe anything, but the prudent give their thoughts to the steps." Give thought to their steps, meaning that as you're walking through life, be thinking about the things that you are doing, and be cautious to not fall into the trap of, I will just share this with everyone and like have no, I'm an open book. There are things that you can keep private in your life, and this is definitely one of them. Be cautious of the scams out there. If it sounds too good to be true, it's probably not true. I think of the worst scam I've ever heard, which is the website that gets set up with like a fake profile, basically like an authority figure. Sometimes it's like a president or like a big CEO, and it's like a fake video of them talking, and the advertisement on the website says, if you send me 1 Bitcoin, then they'll send you 2 back. And this is a surefire way to just lose all your money, because there's no guarantee they're going to do that. And I've never seen a website that gives away money that you have to work for, especially the hardest money to work for, right? Bitcoin as a work-based money, someone offering you something for nothing is definitely a scam. So be very careful that you stay on that you take the steps to be secure with not just where you store your private key, the information that you take in, but also the tricks that people will make you believe. One of the statements that I like to use is that hard money should be hard to use. And this is true, I think, because if it was easy to use, then everyone would be doing it. But that's not the point. The point is that it should be more difficult to use so that there is almost a layer of protection between you and others. And so, whole reason I bring that up is because some people that I know have basically just said like, okay, I'll buy a Bitcoin, and then they buy one and they store it away and they never touch it again. And while that's all well and good if that's your savings goal, the sad part is that years later, when they go and they say, okay, I'm thankful that I did this, and I'm going to spend some of that wealth on maybe paying off a debt or doing like windows for your house or something, they don't know how to use it because they've either forgotten like their private key, they have forgotten how they set it up, And it's important to do those periodic checks with yourself and your wealth to be able to have that, that process set up in place. Proverbs 18:15 says, "The heart of the discerning acquires knowledge, for the ears of the wise seek it out." And that's just to summarize again that, the heart of the discerning acquires knowledge. We are keeping that knowledge close to us and discerning it on a regular basis so that we have the wisdom to move it later on in life. I forget what step we're on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Step 5 here on the list. I kind of summarized it myself, but I said, don't bet the family farm. Okay. We should not be greedy, and we should not be taking out loans to buy Bitcoin. That is the opposite of what God calls us to do with money, is to be greedy or to have like the desire for it. When you do that, you run the risk of needing to sell your Bitcoin later to be able to pay off the loan that allowed you to do that in the first place. And while there are companies that do this, and while there are institutions and people that do this, it's not inherently a sin to do this, more or less. It's just not the way that God has designed us to live. I think about the anxiety that would come with that. If, for instance, let's say you took a $1,000 loan, you bought Bitcoin with it, and the price of Bitcoin dropped over the course of a month or two, and you still had to finance that loan, still had to make those payments on that loan. But now your Bitcoin is only worth half or less than half of what you originally bought it for. It just, it doesn't put us in the position to win. It puts us, it might feel like it at first. It would be a quick little kind of like a hit or like a buzz to be like, oh, I bought Bitcoin, but you didn't use your money to do it. And that's why setting up that savings goal is the most important thing you can do here, so that you start saving just your spare change under the couch, or you're, moving from a 401k system to another. So that way you can forget about all the, headache of having to retire at 65 or whatever. When it's your money's in Bitcoin, you can move it at any moment you so choose. And the point I'm trying to make here is that by using debt, you're basically just saying, I'm going to sell later, and I'm going to sell later to pay that off. The next step is that if you run a business or if you lead a church, start accepting Bitcoin. The best way for a church to acquire Bitcoin is for you to give them yours. This might come as an alarming statement to some people, but it's just true. That's kind of the way that I think most churches are going to experience this, is that their congregation is going to start pushing them towards that acceptance. And the best way to work for Bitcoin, okay, because you can't work for Bitcoin, it's not like a company. The best way to work for Bitcoin, though, is to accept it in your business. So you could even, in a business sense, you could give a discount to customers if they pay in Bitcoin versus cash, for instance. And that would incentivize people to pay in that way so that you can gain the benefits of using the technology, using the money on a daily basis. You could always, pay full price in fiat money or in cash, and then the business could turn around and buy Bitcoin. The same thing could happen in the church too, where the people tithe in cash and the church turns around and turns it into Bitcoin because they see the value add of saving in a money that can't be debased by some random legislation, or that using a money that doesn't require a debt-based system. And so the building of that knowledge is where we can start to help our churches, not just by giving them Bitcoin, because they could very easily just turn it back into cash, but by helping them see that there is more of a mechanism of freedom that comes when you understand how to use the money. The last step here is build your skill at sharing this information. If you've done the verification and of what I'm saying and making sure it's accurate, and you've prayed about it and talked with it about to your church leaders, make sure that you are sharing information with them, the right information, not those scary headlines or those scammy websites or whatnot, but share information that is accurate and real. It's taken me 4 years to have the skills to talk through this small group. I've listened to Bitcoin in the Bible over and over and over the years. But be someone who practices sharing that information that you've learned with others. And I would even take this a step further and just say that while that's important, that's all well and good to share knowledgeable information, be sure you're sharing the gospel. We're called to be disciples that make disciples. So if you're just sharing Bitcoin with someone and that's as far as it goes, really try to gauge yourself and say, I think I can share a little bit about God with this person too. Find that room to talk to them or invite them to church so that you can keep that momentum going. You can keep encouraging them and helping them in the ways that you have been helped. Episode 22 talks a lot about how the world is a scary place. And if you look at the TV and you see a broken world, right, that has wars and horrible weather and just it seems like they're just always sharing bad things. If I could give you a pair of glasses that would only allow you to see the best things in the world, it wouldn't block out the bad things, but it would allow you to frame them properly. Would you put them on? And let me go a step further, because it's more than just putting them on. Let's say you had to do 100 push-ups in order to put them on. Would you still do it? I think that most people's answer would be no. But what I'm trying to get at here is that it requires a lot of hard work to frame your worldview without seeing things with fear and anxiety. That hard work that I'm talking about, the glasses I'm talking about putting on, is looking at the world through how Christ sees it. And the hard work that it takes is the relationship with Him and understanding where He wants your life, not where you want your life. Because that would be just as simple as picking up the glasses and putting them on and saying, oh, everything's better. It takes hard work to see things in that way. Our monetary system, the cash-based system, it is coming to a close. You can feel it. Most of the time when I'm at the coffee shop, I hear people talking about interest rates. It's like the number one thing I hear at the coffee shop. And there's two ways that we can see that. We can be scared of it and be rushing to get and acquire as much cash as possible and get all the things we need before it goes away. Or we can embrace it. And we can say, yes, the system's coming to an end. Yes, we're moving into, the 21st century. But I believe that God does not give us a spirit of fear, and that He would want us to live our life for Him and embrace the future that He has for us. He's allowed all that to happen. And He does not forget or forsake us. So the coolest part is that we can choose to operate in a system that does require work, but allows you to see it and frame it in that way. If you were alive in like the 1900s, at the turn of the 20th century, you would see an entire economy of horse and buggy. In New York City, for instance, there was entire economies set up around feeding animals and removing, feces or waste or, from the streets, and entire, buggy repair shops. But from 1900 to 1910, you saw the introduction of the car. And there were more automobiles on the road than there were horses. And that entire industry of feed and waste delivery and cart repair, and you think about veterinarians even to take care of the horses, that entire industry died off. And in that turn, you could see it as two different ways. You could see it as being, very scary, and that, my horses are going to have nowhere to go and nothing to do, or you could embrace it, and you could see that the future is brighter and better, because not because the automobile is this amazing thing, but because God allows us to move forward in the future and see things in a new light and accept it. We can choose to accept it. And ultimately, we couldn't think of a world now where we go backwards to horse and buggy. We have cars now, we have electricity now, we have cameras now, and I think about someone that, was showing the light bulb off to investors, and they're like, this puts light in your house. All you have to do is plug it into the wall, and then plug your house into our, coal mining electric plant. And they go, okay, but I have candles, and those light my house, and they have for centuries. So why would I need your light bulb? But now we can't think about living without light bulbs. I turn these light bulbs on today with an iPad. So God allows us to move forward into the future and experience those conveniences and have those as a way of keeping society going. It's okay that we don't have, horse and buggies. It's okay that we don't light our homes with candles anymore. And that swing from running a house off of candles or having a horse and buggy to using light bulbs or using an automobile, you can see this throughout history where things move as well from centralized systems to decentralized systems. The Protestant Reformation is one of those examples where the separation of church and state is the decentralization of spirituality. The way the Protestant Reformation was able to make that happen was through the printing press. Because the Bible was no longer just contained within the church, and they could print copies of the Bible and distribute those to people, you could have now more churches in more places ran by people rather than ran by an institution. This move from centralization to decentralization is one of work, though. You wouldn't be able to, make the printing press just do the printing press thing on its own. There were people operating it. It took work to make those things happen. And there are conveniences that come with centralization. I think about Amazon, where it's basically every single shop you can think of all in one website, and it'll show up at your house in 2 days. That's a convenience, right? But then I think about the inconveniences with centralization, which is that 70% of beef companies are tied up in four companies. The entire beef industry is just ran by 4 companies. So central banking even is kind of the lender of last resort, but that convenience of them being the lender of last resort means they can steal from everyone as well by just printing up the money. And you could say you don't want centralization, but that means that we don't want centralization through the form of like censorship. When things become centralized and it's only ran by a small party, it's very easy to censor out everything else or just shut it down. It's a double-edged sword because you get the conveniences with centralization, but then you lose the ability to speak or act freely. And the central power starts to distort everything that you use to build your life, grow a business, start a family. I think about people my age that are scared to start a family because they can't afford things right now. It's like, how am I going to afford a kid if I can't afford things right now? And that's fair. That's accurate. But the reason that it's accurate is because these centralizations have distorted the reality that people have had forever. I think about GoFundMe and how if they don't like your platform or they don't like your idea, that they can just take the money away for whatever reason. You even see that now with, I'm thankful I live in the United States, but in the United Kingdom, they are arresting people daily for things that they're saying on social media. And not just like mean and hateful things, like someone could say that, they don't like a certain war. And just because they say that they don't like a certain war, they can go to jail for that. It starts to distort things, this centralization. It's once it becomes controlled by a small party, that small party is able to do the majority of the problem making. Flip that with decentralization, and you immediately create friction. Things become a little slower or a little harder to do. For instance, with decentralization with money, it's difficult to hold Bitcoin. I'm not going to say it's easy to go get a wallet, buy on an exchange, move it off the exchange into a private key, hold your private key in a secure and safe location. That's not easy. It's there's some friction there. It's also hard to run a node. You could buy a pre-made one and most of the software is already installed for you, but you have to trust that service. If you want to have things decentralized, it is worthwhile because it allows the freedom and the freedoms to come back and the communication to come back. But it does create a lot of friction for people to be able to do the same things they were doing before. Like without Amazon, some businesses today just wouldn't exist because that speed of delivery to them is what keeps their business alive. What happens with Bitcoin though is whenever you rely on consensus, which is just the agreement that everyone is using the Bitcoin system, that consensus of the network is what allows it to thrive. And it allows the trust to be removed. Whereas like with a centralized authority, you have to trust that the government is going to, support you in your old age. The whole reason I talk about this, and I know I haven't said a lot of scriptures about this, but it's just to help summarize this idea that the decentralization, the hard work that's required to do these types of things, and the fact that they don't require theft or cheating, is that it reflects the mind of God. It will be blessed because it creates human flourishing. We're not so concerned about companies growing large. We're more concerned about people, that we can help people, anyone, everyone. And that our work can be measured appropriately. If our work isn't not measured appropriately, then it can just be taken away from us. I was talking to someone yesterday about how, you could work for 25 years and save your money, and all the government has to do is print some up, and you just lost 15, 20, 25 years of work. That's not reflecting the heart of God at all. There is a risk that comes with decentralization, however, And that risk we've talked about comes with the lack of self-responsibility. The risk of self-responsibility in storing your wealth yourself versus the risk of centralization, which is the single point of failure. In the decentralized model where you're in charge of your finances and no one can take it away from you, if you screw it up, you're the only one that loses. In the centralized authority, when we place all the trust in them, if they screw up, everyone loses. So not everything needs to be decentralized by nature. We don't have to think about this, for every single piece of our society. But when it comes to money, with it being decentralized, it creates human flourishing. It allows us not to rely on trust and to rely instead on verification. Sorry, I lost my place. Is decentralization a biblical principle? Yes. We are sovereign beings through God who allows us that dominion. He gives us secondary sovereignty to own the things that we own. And decentralization of the churches is exactly what Jesus preached about, to go to the ends of the earth and preach the gospel. It's exactly how he intended for things to progress. It's important to remember that even though there is decentralization in lots of things and that it is biblical, there is only one way to God, and that's through Jesus Christ. There are different forms that you learn about Jesus, and how we worship in our churches are all different, but it doesn't change the fact that we all have to rely on him. He is the one that continues our journey, that keeps us going. And it allows us to not just repent of our sins, but also it allows us the freedom to go into heaven without sacrifice, because he was the ultimate sacrifice. It's important to remember that all of us have sinned through Adam as part of the fall, and that decentralization in and of itself says, I can stand on my own and I don't need a savior. When in reality, the entire point of this podcast, this series, is that even though our money needs decentralization, we ourselves need Jesus to redeem us. From a technical level on Bitcoin, there are multiple layers. And one of the things that we have not talked about at all through this entire series is the Bitcoin Lightning Network. You can think of the Bitcoin Lightning Network as a second ability that Bitcoin has obtained. What we talked about this entire time is that Bitcoin has blocks of about 10-minute increments, and that transactions go inside of those blocks and they get confirmed by the network. And that would be the miners. So confirmed by the miners and secured by the nodes. I want to make sure I'm leaving you with all of the tools that you can start your Bitcoin journey with. This is more to kind of finish up the whole thought of what Bitcoin can do. And I won't be able to discuss it all right here, right now. I can give you a highlighted detail or a highlighted, overview of what the Lightning Network is. But this is the start of your journey, is for you to go and use these tools, or to experience them or understand them for yourself. And I do think it's important to start that journey for yourself. So let's talk through the Lightning Network. I said it's a second layer on top of Bitcoin. And what it does is it allows instant settlement through what's called an off-chain transaction. So everything we've talked about so far, again, is that things get confirmed into a blockchain, or that transactions get confirmed in blocks. Those transactions are typically from point A to point B, sending from one private key to another. What the Lightning Network has allowed, and this is a recent development in Bitcoin, not super recent, but anyway, what it allows you to do is essentially take Bitcoin from its main purpose, like its main usability, and create another way of using it. So you would take it what's called off chain, and you would open a channel with another node. So if I run a node and you run a node, I can open a channel to yours, and essentially what it says is, hey, I'm going to agree to hold this Bitcoin between me and you. So it actually has a 2-key system. I'm going to hold the Bitcoin between me and you, and we can transfer Bitcoin back and forth to each other over this channel. And I trust that whenever we close the channel or transact back to the main layer, that wherever the balance of this lands will go to the correct people. Essentially, I know that kind of sounds confusing, but what it allows is for Bitcoin to move instantly between people. And when you use the Lightning Network, you set up what's called a hash time-locked contract. It's an agreement. And that agreement with that other party allows you the flexibility to move Bitcoin instantly. You don't have to wait for miners to confirm the transaction. However, it does require that layer of trust. You have to trust that the other node, the other party that you're opening that channel with, is not going to steal your funds. You have to trust that when you close the channel, that they're going to broadcast the correct amount back to them and back to you. Let's say we opened a channel and put, 2 Bitcoin in the channel. And so then it would be me opening it to this other party. They would have 0, I would have 2, and I'm opening this channel. Let's say I transacted 1 across the network, and then let's say that it was closed. Well, I spent my 2 Bitcoin to this other party. And so when the channel closes, 1 goes to one party and 1 goes to the other. But that is all done separately from the blockchain. It doesn't need to be recorded on the ledger. It can be recorded on a second layer of that ledger. This has both use cases in our daily life, because you can set up these channels, and when you do that, you can move Bitcoin instantly and use it for things in your daily life. It allows you to use it more than just a savings technology. It allows you to actually use it as an instant money, and for smaller amounts as well. Since the ending of the podcast of Bitcoin in the Bible, which they did in 2021, it now being 2025, there have been multiple new developments that allow for, the Lightning Network was around back then when they made this podcast, but there are additional levels on top of Lightning as well that are being implemented so that you can have even more privacy with your transactions. One of those being Cashew. And I won't get into that. I just like to make sure I give you all the tools so that you can find your footing as you're trying to understand kind of what this is and how to use it. So those changes that take place on the network, it is important to keep up with them, but this is not a full-time job. Bitcoin's not something you can work for as like a career. I mean, I guess you could be like a developer But you can't work for like a company or an organization that there is no Bitcoin organization. This whole process is about learning about Bitcoin and running a node so that you can do all of these operations without anyone's permission. You currently need permission to go get a bank account, to have a debit card, to, even have a car. But this money doesn't require anyone's permission. And through that, I just want to say to maybe someone out there who has never saved, over the months that I've been doing this series, I have realized that some people don't save at all. That's not to call them anything. It's what I've realized is that there's people that don't save cash. There's people that don't save their time. There's people that don't save their photos. I mean, there's people that don't save things. Maybe you're living off debt, and that's how you've operated your whole life, is that you live off of debt. Maybe you've never had a savings plan. Maybe this idea of one is just so new to you that it's almost too hard to hear. Or maybe you have trusted other institutions with your savings and not had a good experience. I would say that wherever you are in your journey, start saving today. Maybe you start saving your spare change, like we've talked about. You just start somewhere. Maybe you take $1 out of your bank account just every day, $1, and you just save in cash. I know that this whole time we've been talking about saving in Bitcoin, but if you're not saving at all, start somewhere. It doesn't matter if you see it as a little or as a lot. Again, this is about the act of starting something new. It will allow you to start seeing that you have value and that God is blessing you. You already have things at your disposal that you can do things with. Sell things you don't need. Get the spare change out from under your couch. That's all I can say. But the idea here is that just to start seeing your life 1% differently so that you can start to see the benefits that you have. If you've never saved before, it's probably really hard for you to jump straight to Bitcoin. That's not my point. My point is for you to take the steps to get there. I would say the same thing with giving. If you've never tithed to a church before, start today. Because maybe it's not even tithing to a church. Maybe it's tithing, not even tithing. Maybe it's giving to a homeless person. If you see them on the street and you always think something about them, just stop and start giving. See that change occur in your life. If money's not there yet, if that savings plan is not there yet, or you don't feel like it's time, start serving. Start giving your time to the church, or start giving your time to a nonprofit in your area that's helping the needy. My point in all of this is that you should stay focused on the reasons why you're doing what you're doing. Start somewhere. Just start. I heard it said earlier this week that getting someone to study something when they're out of school or out of college, even just 1 year removed, is nearly impossible. If they're not being told that they have to study, they typically won't. It just becomes too much. They just stop and they give up. My prayer is that you would begin to study this new form of money and that you would use it in a way that glorifies God. At the very beginning of this group, we talked about putting Jesus first. And that's exactly what we still need to do. If we find ourselves studying Bitcoin more than we're studying our Bible, it starts to become a really good gauge for what we are focusing on and what we're putting first in our life. We can shift our attention away from these types of things on a daily or weekly basis. But if in your heart you know that you are not giving God the right amount of attention, start. And again, start somewhere. Maybe it's reading a verse. Maybe it's just turning on a worship song instead of a rap playlist. Maybe it's, actually attending church just once a month or watching online even. Just start somewhere. Start giving him that attention so that he can be at the center of our life. I'll say this too, if you have never accepted Jesus into your heart, or if you've never made him the ruler of your life, you can start that today too. It's a journey. We say this prayer every single week here at church, and even the people who believe and know Jesus to be their Savior say this prayer as a belief of what they know to be true and as a benefit for the other people around them that may be saying it for the first time. And as closing today, I would just like to ask if you would like to accept Jesus into your heart, you can repeat this prayer after me. Say, Jesus, I love you. I thank you for loving me. I thank you for believing in me when I don't believe in myself. I ask forgiveness for my sin. I ask forgiveness for my mistakes. Come into my life. Make me new. Do what only you can do. I give you everything I have. I give you everything I am. I give you everything I hope to be. I give you all of me today. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. If you just said that prayer, you're starting that journey. And forgive yourself, because he forgave you. And go forgive others, because he forgave them too. I hope that you've gotten a lot out of this series. And if you'd like to reach out to me, I'll leave some links in the description below so that you can let me know that you said that prayer. I'd love to connect with you and talk with you about it. I'd love to answer any questions you have about the series or about my church or about anything. I'm an open book when it comes to that, and I really hope that you enjoyed this as much as I did. Thank you.